Python iterable. An iterable is going to be any object that you can go through and process its items one by one. So the two key concepts there is one, an iterable has items, and two, you can process them one by one. The most common example of this in Python is going to be a list. And let's look through a couple examples here. And we'll actually look through a list, and I'll type this one out to start. And so I'm going to say my list, and I'm going to define a variable, and I'm just going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through this list, which means I'm going to process its items one by one, and I'm going to do that with a for loop. And so I'm going to say for I in my list, print I. And then what you see here is we went through this list one by one and printed out each item within it. So if we were to get the vocabulary down here, my list is an iterable, meaning you can iterate through it. And this for loop is an iterator, meaning you can use it to iterate. So it's an iterator. And what you did is you iterated through this list. Okay? So you can also do this by unpacking a whole bunch of variables at a time. So here, for example, my list has 3 items, 1, 2, and 10. And actually, I'm just going to pull out its items via variables that are all defined on the same line, X, Y, and Z with my list. You get the same thing right there. Okay. Now, what you can also do is you can iterate through a list, but then you can do what's called unpacking, meaning what we just did here is we just unpacked 3 variables from this list. Well, in this case, you can see here that we're going to have a tuple, but it's a list of tuples. And so there's 1 tuple, 2 tuples, and 3 tuples within this larger list. So what we're going to do here, and that's not students, this is going to be grades, we are going to iterate through students, and then we're going to print the name and print the grade. I'll go ahead and do this. And as you can see here, what happened is we iterated through students. And so it looked at this first item within the list. But because we're unpacking 2 variables right here, name got assigned to Bob and grade got assigned to 91. And then we simply printed out these 2. So name and Bob, and then printed out a blank line there. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is look at what we call enumeration. So what you'll see here is if we go back to our first list, we're iterating through the values of this list, meaning we get 1, 2, 3, and 4 returned to us. However, sometimes you want the index, meaning you want to know which item in the list is actually being returned back to you. And the way that you do that in Python is with what's called enumerate or enumeration. So in this case, whereas, let's do a separate first example here. And so if I were to just go through this list, so we'll call this for value in my list, print value. You get all the different values right here. But what if I wanted to know that 2, 2, 3, 4 was actually item number 1 in Python because we indexed at 0? Well, in order to do that, you can do the same thing that we did there, but you're going to want to surround your iterable with enumerate, and you're going to want to pull out an extra variable called I. Well, you can call it whatever you want, but I generally call it I, and this stands for index. So you'll see which index your value sits at. And I'll go ahead and run this and print, and you can see here that here's index 0, value 12, index 1, value 2, 2, 3, 4. And to make it a bit cleaner, what you could do is you could just put I and value right next to each other, and you can see here that you get the 2 mixed, or the 2 side by side. Lastly, we'll take one more example. You may know this, you may not know this, but you can iterate through a string as well. So you can iterate through each character. Go ahead and run this. I had cool string with a for loop, and it prints out each character one at a time. Now that is Python iterable. If you want more information on this, head over to our website and you can see a bigger write-up on this.